The Organization for American States is pressing the Bahamas to abolish capital punishment, but the government says it's something that must be looked at closely as the provision is still on our law books. And as Shanique Miller tells us, removing it may not be as simple as many may think.
Although cries for the government to enforce capital punishment have quieted somewhat, Bahamians as a whole, in particular families of victims of crimes, still lobby for government to carry out capital punishment. But a lobby this week from the Organization of American States might cause the wait to be indefinite. Here's why.
This is something that has developed internationally. Throughout Europe, you've seen the way in which the highest court of appeal has interpreted the law, where they have defined those circumstances in which capital punishment would be applied by the court as the worst of the worst cases.
Demonstrated just this March in the case of convicted murderer Maxo Tito, when the Privy Council determined his brutal killing of a young woman was not considered the worst of the worst. Prime Minister Christie talked about that ruling.
And that was not worst of the worst, even though by any definition in the Bahamas that would be seen as worst of the worst. And on top of that, they have said that on top of that, after worst of the worst, you have another set of standards, and that is that the person must be incapable of being redeemed.
Of Prime Minister Christie's earlier reference to trends in Europe, the OAS is pushing for those trends to take root right here in the region. The OAS is urging that the death penalty be abolished or impose a moratorium on the practice. The goal of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is to eliminate the death penalty in OAS member states. Now, in the United States, the death penalty is carried out in 37 states, with Texas recording the highest number of executions. The last time an execution was carried out here in the Bahamas was in 2001, but that doesn't change Christie's position on capital punishment.
I happen to personally be on the other side of the equation. It divides the country. You know, I'm for capital punishment. My wife is against capital punishment. Colleagues in government is for it. Colleagues in government is against it, and that reflects the division in the country.
As for the prompting to abolish capital punishment, Christie says the government will have to examine it more closely.
The laws of the Bahamas requires now provide for capital punishment. The former government, our predecessors, actually passed a law to further define and strengthen the circumstances under which, to bring more certainty to the confusion that appeared to exist in the court as to what the laws, what circumstances, or the circumstances in which capital punishment can be applied by the court or sentence can be given.
However the Bahamas leans, and if it enforces capital punishment, will largely depend on pressures from international organizations and the changing views on the topic around the world. Shanique Miller, 7S News.